Hello. I wanted to jump on to let you know that we had some technical difficulties with some of the audio in this podcast, but the content was just too good not to share. So we hope you like it. Enjoy the show.
Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity.
I have started recording BIM Thoughts, and BIM Thoughts is now being recorded, which you're now listening to, which means it's working and you are listening to the right podcast. Well, hello there. We are joined by Carl Storms, Dana DeFilippi, which I got the name right this time, and the ever popular, who you're going to meet, who you're going to know, Jess Purcell. Jess, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm pretty good. So, define yourself.
I am the design technology manager for Shepley Bulfinch, which is kind of a catch-all title for a lot of things. So I manage the basically digital practice. So, research and development, rollout, what we're doing, as well as a small team of design technology specialists.
Wow. Well, tell us about you.
Well, I have a master's of architecture. I built a house for Solar Decathlon while I was in school.
Wow. Do you build 10 of them?
No, just one.
Just one.
One was plenty. Yeah, I'm a bit of a maker. I have a dog. I have a lot of plants.
Yes. Wow.
What do you make?
So, yeah, what do you make?
Oh, a lot of things. I probably couldn't even. Right now, I'm really into watercolors, and I also made a whole bunch of masks for like friends and family. And then also for a friend's wedding, we did the bridal party's face masks.
Wow. That seems to be a popular thing these days, making masks. I wonder why.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. Hopefully next year we won't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be wonderful. So why do they call it a solar decathlon?
It is basically, so, I used to have this spiel down pat, but that was so long ago. The U.S. Department of Energy puts on a competition every couple of years with collegiate teams, and you design and build a house that runs on solar energy, so it's supposed to be net zero, and you compete it on 10 categories.
Oh, there you go. There's the 10.
There's things like energy usage, water usage. There's like cost of like how much it would be to build, probably some other things. That was only 3.
That's 3. That's fine. That's all. That's all I need. I just wanted to know why it was a decathlon. Well, you're judged on 10 things.
Yes.
Well, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. So, as a design technology guru, and you're also the Revit users group as well?
I advise our Revit user group.
You advise, and that's yours as in the companies, or yours as in the cities?
No, so within our company, so we do not have a strict BIM manager as a title.
Okay.
But within our company, we have a number of people who are very Revit savvy, and they have their Revit user group. And these are the people that make the kind of decisions within the firm around standards and templates and that kind of thing.
I don't think we have a BIM manager per se anymore either. It's more of a bunch of people in the IT department that know how to do it and do the kickoff meetings and stuff. And then we have the main model person on the design side for that project. Yeah. Seems to be the roles are shifting. Used to be the IT person was the main person. Now it's not, because I think Revit's becoming mainline.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of a good thing, right? I mean, maybe not if you've made your entire life's work being a BIM manager, but I mean, that means everybody knows what they're doing, right? Everybody's capable of managing their own models.
Right. They should know what they're doing. Or at least know to ask if they don't know what they're doing.
Know where to go. Yeah.
Right. Because you never get in trouble for asking how to fix something.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something we've been pushing really hard this year because with moving remote, you don't have that
Right.
like turn to the person next to you. So
Mhm.
our Revit user group really like kind of stepped up and we built a Teams channel for them that was
Yeah.
more broadly reaching. And they basically monitor that like it's a help desk channel. So people put
Wow.
in questions of what they need. The Revit user group team will watch it, but then we also have just like random people in the firm who will also answer questions too, which has been really cool to see.
Mhm. Are you uh uh let me I know that your company is a big user in synthesis from knowledge architecture.
Yes.
Are you finding that users are asking more questions in Teams than they did on synthesis?
Yes. Well, I guess it depends on the thing. When it's your day-to-day questions, like how do I do this in Revit? I'm looking for this detail. Those kinds of things you'll see in Teams a lot more.
Uh-huh.
Part of it is because you get your answers faster, and I think another thing too is like people who are newer to the firm may not feel like comfortable posting
Oh,
on like a public platform. I don't know how
right.
to do this, you know? Whereas like
Yeah.
Teams is like a crowdsourcing, just kind of chat
Isn't that
platform.
isn't that interesting? Because the same people are in Teams
Oh yeah,
that are watching
and
the
it's equally
synthesis.
permanent too, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
the
equally
same like
permanent.
permanent
It's
writer. Yeah,
just
I
weird.
think it's maybe the fact that like you know those channels are divided, so you don't have like the VPs and
Hmm.
directors watching the rug Teams
Right.
channel like
Hmm.
they do Finch. You know, so sorry, Finch is what we call our
Yeah,
synthesis
we
for
call ours
everybody.
Interact.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Dana has one that's called something completely different.
No, we don't.
No?
But we do use
Use
Teams.
Teams. You don't have you're not using synthesis for your intranet?
No, we use
SharePoint.
SharePoint.
I'm sorry.
Is that different? I don't know. I'm not the person. We are technically part of like the IT wing,
Yes.
just like you guys are talking
Right.
about. We refer to ourselves as the digital delivery group,
Wow.
which is
DDG.
which is like the DDG,
DDG,
and
yes.
we're part of a bigger whole, which is the TIP or technology and
Yeah.
practice group, which is also comprised of like visualization and
Uh-huh.
computation
You
and
need to
data solutions.
you need to come up with something that starts with a D for group.
I guess it
So
would
it could
be
just
like
be D squared.
D to the
Yeah,
third,
D to the third.
digital
D
delivery
cubed.
group,
So I guess
D
squared is
cubed.
2. Cubed is 3.
The
Wow.
insight that
See
goes
where
on at
this
the end of these
went?
podcasts.
We squirreled that one, didn't we? Woo!
You do typically have a way,
I do. I squirrel it.
but no, I mean I think it is part of bigger, especially now that we are working all remotely. How do we get to, especially the new staff who maybe doesn't know
Right.
the bid manager, who whatever you're called,
Hmm.
the person who teaches you Revit and coaches you along the way and asks, you ask them support questions. I think Teams has made it so much easier. And like you're saying, you can almost crowdsource it in a way that, a random user in some random
Hmm.
office answers rather than me. It's actually pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it is fantastic, especially when they're right.
Yeah. Or they think about something that I wouldn't
Right.
have,
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess the balancing act on that is to correct somebody in such a way, if they answer it incorrectly, that they doesn't sound like they're a complete idiot and won't ever answer a question again.
Right.
That would be, like, I guess we'd have to train everybody in our department how to do. Well, that's not saying that in a bad way. If someone in our department's listening, Alejandro, that's Alejandro listening. Not that he would say anything in a bad way. He does a very good job. But I think that would be something we would have to really pay attention to if we did that. But I like that idea. We are getting ready to introduce Teams to our company, which we should have a while ago, but it is what it is. And I like that idea. I see communication evolving from our intranet to Teams to ask those day-to-day questions and to crowdsource the answers. And then the internet would just become an announcement platform, I think.
Yeah, we also find that, we didn't completely throw away synthesis. So if something comes up on Teams that feels like something that's absolutely worth sharing that everyone needs to know, like we'll craft a post around that thing. But if it's just answering someone's one-off question about their model, maybe that doesn't need to be in front of everyone in the firm.
Right.
The other thing, too, from an IT perspective, so all of our design technology specialists, myself included, we run help desk. So we're all trained a little bit in being able to support from an IT standpoint. Part of that is it takes the load off of our IT people to need to know how people are using the software. They just need to know how, to deploy the software. And then we're kind of that go-between. But it's helpful for us to be able to kind of point to those posts. So if someone asks, like, oh, how do I do this? Or like, oh, well, so-and-so 6 months ago said this here, and I think you should look at that.
Right.
So, everything's documentation with us.
Right.
How can I not have this conversation again, or have a way to spur that conversation better, and just not repeat work and research,
I do know. That is difficult because they won't search. It's easy for them just to type the question.
I've actually posted
Because
Teams
why search?
posts about searching Teams.
Oh, yeah?
I wonder if anybody searches my Teams post about searching Teams.
Oh, yeah.
That's Inception.
Right.
Mhm.
But no, I think I would say at least half of my job is documenting.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you can't document a workflow, it's useless, I think,
Right.
honestly. And then where all that is collected is also important. So we've made it a rule that if whatever it is that we're creating, like however it is, whether it's like a article or something more official, excuse me, something more official, then we always will post about it in Teams and say, hey, this exists. And so at least it creates something that you could search if you had the know-how, or that we can share around as the tip group.
Yes, tip group is good.
So I have a question. Now that you're all using Teams, or at least coming into the world of Teams. So I don't use it where I am now. I did use it back at the Imaginate days. We were just sort of rolling from Skype into Teams, and I've come across it in a few other organizations. Everybody seems to be pretty good at using it for a Slack alternative or a Skype alternative, some of those other chat organizations or types, to work the same way Zoom does. Everybody's good at that. But is anybody taking advantage of the wiki part, the file part, the way that you can sort of store everything in one spot and have people, go there to find it? The fact that they're searching posts and don't find things leads me to believe no. But I'm curious if anybody's taking advantage of the other integrated features inside of Teams that seem to get missed.
I would say that we are. So we actually did a Teams rollout December of last year. So that was something that we did before March and everything hit. So we didn't have a huge amount of adoption, but we were kind of like, Skype's going away in January, you're using Teams now, this is how it works. And, we did a pretty good rollout. Everybody understood it. But once it got to the point where everyone had to use it because you couldn't call people's desk phones or anything anymore, people started really digging into features. And we do actually find that our project teams like keeping files in there. There's also the ability to add external users. So there are some projects that have, like, say, the structural team or someone else in the actual Teams project with them. And that's a way that they can share and collaborate on files that are not necessarily the Revit model.
We're looking at that. That's one of our challenges we're trying to figure out, is that sharing of files outside of the company, because we need to control that. We need to control which files go out so that we can keep record of it. So then in case something happens, we have a record of who said what and what they said and what they sent and all that other good stuff. And we're doing that today with Newforma.
Mm-hmm.
And so transitioning to Teams, that's been one of our challenges we're trying to overcome. How are we going to, do we limit that? Do we let that go in Teams? How do we archive that stuff to keep a record of it? What do we do when the project's over? Now we've got this closeout that used to be difficult, but now is even more difficult with all the different cloud services. So those are some of the things that IT has to think about and why it takes so darn long to roll out stuff.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Newforma. So for those kind of record things that go out, we've actually just made the switch to TonicDM.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been pretty interesting. It's always hard to shift mid-project. So we
Mm-hmm.
still have some projects that it's just like it's too much to move over. But for everyone who has moved and like the new projects coming in, it's been a pretty smooth transition. Especially with the focus they have on search and the belief that they have in searchability and owning your data. So they have APIs on the back end that I can pull like anything I want into Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
I should have mentioned I'm a huge data nerd.
Mm.
Everything I do, like I got to look at the data for it. So like Newforma, we would get the monthly email of that like horribly formatted Excel spreadsheet that
Mm-hmm.
tells me like who did what for that entire month, not like when or what project or how often. Like it was just that aggregate number, which is like so infuriating to me because, I
Right.
want to know what people are doing. And, it's not like a big brother kind of like watching you kind of thing. We use data as a way to like see problems before they come up.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do a switch to Tonic and all of a sudden there's 5 people who have never filed an email, you can reach out to them and be like, why haven't you tried it yet? Or you switch and you find out like this small project all of a sudden has done like all of their RFIs over there and you haven't told anyone they have to do RFIs yet. You can grab that person and be like, hey, how do you like it? And can you share that story on Synthesis? And,
Right.
find those positive deviants and use those people and influencers to your advantage that, they wouldn't have said anything because they're just having a fine time in your rollout. The most vocal people are always the ones who are having a bad time.
Right.
And having the data, you can find out the people who are using it successfully.
It's so funny. It feels like Jess and I
Mm-hmm.
work for the same exact company. So,
I feel like we might have
no,
had
we
that conversation before.
yeah, no, exactly. No, we literally just finished rolling out Tonic and doing all of the inner office training on that, and it seems pretty nice with the integration with Outlook and all of that, and the email filing system like Jess was talking about. Luckily, I actually try to stay a little bit away from that type of stuff, and if I did need to know anything about it, I would probably go to my Teams, like my official digital delivery group in Microsoft Office team. It's like such a contradiction of way of saying things. Their like wiki page, like Carl was talking about, where I enticed my boss to actually start the wiki with, because I just can't be expected to know everything, right? Like with Keynote Manager and logging and creating files there and Clarity and Tonic now and BIM 360 and creating support cases and what are the charge numbers, and I mean all of these things, right? Like how are you supposed to remember all of these things when you're like the person that people are coming to with questions? So it's actually been a really wonderful resource. And I would say everything in terms of file content is either stored between BIM 360 or Teams, because in addition to some of the help desk and forum type pages, we also have obviously project specific teams and discipline specific teams and practice specific teams. I think we're actually getting a little bit overboard with the amount of teams that we have. It's like, when do you draw the line?
Right.
You know?
Yes. Too many teams.
Yeah, no, but I think it's proven that we can work this way well, right? With the cloud and the Teams and the Zooms and the Tonics and whatever, new formats, those types of things that, make it kind of seamless and don't necessarily require us to even sit on a network at all.
Yeah. Do we even need a network anymore?
What are you finding, Jess?
Well, so it's interesting. We actually made a really hard pivot this year towards cloud services, including moving all of our data up to Azure and moving to virtual desktops because the lease is up in one of our offices, and we were already going to be moving, and this idea of like, how many times do you move all of your infrastructure? So, the phone system goes through this office, most of the VPN and all the data like lived in that office, and then smaller offices like connect to it. So, we were like, we've been talking about, in 5 years' time, we're going to be, hybrid workforce, everything's going to be in the cloud. Like, we can do it now while we can take advantage of it and just kind of set up a system that, it doesn't matter what we do, what offices look like in the future, the decisions we make about how we're going to work should not be made by IT infrastructure, like saying, oh, well, we have to have this kind of office in these places because of like having a server. It ties the business down to decisions that, we're architects. Like, let's start thinking about what offices look like in the future. And if all of our data is in the cloud and everybody's connecting to the cloud to work, they're not tied to specific offices.
Right. Yeah, they're no longer tied to the office.
Yeah.
It can work anywhere.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing because we all talk to each other, and when this whole thing happened, everybody's doing their kind of cloud migration stuff, and everybody was all on board for BIM 360. And we had a problem that people's local home networks were not good enough to open a BIM 360 model.
Yeah.
So here we have and we probably only have 10% of our projects in BIM 360, but those people were then remoting into a machine that was sitting in the office to open their cloud model. And it was just like, it seemed like a good idea, but then, it wasn't really pandemic proof when you have people relying on very, very poor home internet, what they can afford, what's even provided in their neighborhood. So it was interesting that, it felt like this thing that was going to solve that problem, and it didn't. So we still had to look for ways to normalize everybody's work experience. And that's when we started looking at cloud desktops. But that's also come with a whole slew of problems, not just in people's change of workflow, but I mean, not a lot of people are doing cloud desktops right now. And it's kind of a new thing, especially in the AEC industry. And, software is not ready to support that. So anytime we have a problem, they're like, well, we don't support remote desktop connections, or we don't support that graphics card, or whatever. And, it's something that you expect going in, being on the leading edge of anything. But it's very interesting sometimes the type of pushback you get when, it's like, this is where the industry is going. Like, everybody's doing cloud things. We've even got the gaming industry is moving towards streaming. To tell me that it's dependent on NVIDIA's graphics card and how that functions, I can only believe that for so long,
And when we get to go back to the office, I think things are going to be different, because you're going to have some people who will want to stay working at home, and some people who will want to go to the office. And at the time we're in today, where everybody has to work from home because the office is closed, and depending on which jurisdiction you're at, I can see the challenge you described with their internet not working, and now the company needs to make some adjustments in order to get them to continue to work. But I wonder if that's still fair for the company after people are allowed to come back to work and things return to, in air quotes, normal.
Yeah.
Where that becomes I'm sorry your internet is slow. You're going to have to get it resolved if you want to continue to work from home.
Well, so that's the thing. The cool thing about the cloud desktops is your local connection is only just pulling the video and, laptop or mouse and keyboard.
Right.
So it normalizes, for the most part, everyone's experience, whether you're in the office or whether you're at home. You can connect now from the job site and not have to worry about, is it going to take me 20 minutes to try to open this Revit model when I'm on the job site? We did a pretty thorough testing before we launched it a few weeks ago, and you can run it off your phone hotspot.
Yeah.
I mean, you can work anywhere now. You can work on an iPad. You could connect from your phone. I tried it. It's very dumb. You really can't do any work, but if you really wanted to,
yeah,
you could do it from your phone.
And I've done that on the airplane a couple times. I had to log into a server to fix something while in the airplane.
Yeah.
But do you use Enscape and all that other stuff remotely through?
So we
Azure?
are working with that. We did some testing and it worked. And then of course you get like one or two models that are just too beefy and it doesn't work, and then
Right.
you reach out to Enscape
and what about and then you got the problem with SketchUp too.
And Format as well. Anything that wants to use the graphics card doesn't play nice with remote desktop.
Right.
I mean, it used to not work at all. So we've got some progress happening, but we are currently testing different versions of the Windows virtual desktops, different graphics cards, to figure out which is going to work the best for us. Because that's the other thing too, if we want more people using things like Enscape, how do we put that kind of hardware in their hands? Not just that, but we're all working remotely, so now everybody wants to digitally sketch. You cannot get a computer that runs Enscape and has a touchscreen and a stylus unless they're like $3,000 and they're super heavy and no one wants them.
Right.
So, if we can push that kind of thing to the cloud, which again, in my opinion, that is what it seems like gaming is pushing the industry to do, then we can get everybody smaller, lighter endpoints that have styluses. Everybody has the same experience. Again, anybody who wants to use Enscape can jump in and use Enscape. Everybody has the ability to sketch and collaborate. Everybody has the ability to connect to a cloud desktop and have the same working experience, whether they're in the office or at home or at their mother-in-law's in the woods. It doesn't matter.
Because we looked at VDI.
Yeah.
And it's cheaper to buy somebody a $3,000 laptop by the time it's all said and done, is what we've found out. Because you still got to buy them a laptop.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a $3,000 laptop, but you still got to buy them a laptop. So there's $1,000. Then you got to buy the license, and you got to buy the NVIDIA card license, and then you got to buy the NVIDIA card that will support only 5 to 7 users if you're lucky, and then the server infrastructure in the background. So if you're hosting your own VDI, it's incredibly expensive to get a solution where Enscape is 60% the speed, is what we have found.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But I think the way it was before, we only could give Enscape to so many people, and this will give us the ability, people only use it when they're using it, and then the machines actually like shut themselves down when no one needs it. So instead of having one super laptop that you're shipping all over the country to different people and someone has it sitting on their desk for a week, someone uses it for an hour and then someone else uses it for an hour. So we're finding it's not as bad as it might seem, but it's definitely not a decision we made because it was going to save us money.
Right.
So I guess the question I have is to take this conversation back a couple steps and maybe outline for some of those people out there that aren't aware what's the difference between a desktop in the cloud versus remote desktop versus a VDI solution.
Sure. Like a remote desktop connection is basically anytime you're on one machine and you remote into another machine and you're getting the video feed of that. So for us, we had a bunch of towers, just big desktops in all of our offices that people could remote into. Say you were in Boston working on a Houston project, you could remote into a machine in Houston and be close to that project data. A cloud desktop is a machine that lives in Microsoft or whoever's server warehouse that you are remoting into and using. So you're paying for that as a service rather than owning the hardware and maintaining it. You're paying per minute of uptime and then per minute of storage. And again, I'm not strictly IT, so that's the full extent of my knowledge on like price and all that kind of thing. But it's really not that different. It's just fundamentally different from like an IT infrastructure standpoint because you don't have to maintain and upgrade that hardware. The other thing too is if say one of our shared workstations, which is what we called the ones that were in a office, needed like an update, you have to remote into it, you have to update it, you have to do it to all the machines separately. Some of them kind of like stop working. Whereas this, you can set up an image and you can basically just like start up and stop machines whenever you want. So say we're like, okay, this graphics card's not working for us, we're going to try this other one. In like 20 minutes, and not even like in 2 minutes we can just be like, okay, kill that whole pool of machines, here's the new pool of machines. When someone logs out of the other one, it shuts down for the last time, and when they log in, they're only going to get one of the new ones. And so it's like instantly the entire fleet of machines now meets what we want.
So it really does come down to more of a service versus running your own things, which makes sense. I mean, for years there was
Yes.
the small and medium-sized architecture firms that didn't have in-house IT, that didn't have those things, so they were outsourcing the IT. This is the same kind of thing, except that this not so much the software, but the hardware is stored in the cloud and look after it. So then I guess the next question, coming back to what Bill was saying, is sure, the VDI solution wasn't the cheapest solution. We could buy them that $3,000 laptop, but is there a benefit to that premium service that you're paying for? They're always up. The end user is always happy with the performance. They get access to what they want. They're not waiting for something to load, something to download. So where's that fine line between giving them what they want and letting them be productive versus we're paying a premium for that? We're no longer going to Walmart and buying the on sale Black Friday gaming computer and shipping that to everybody in the office. There has to be some sort of happy medium in there, does there not?
Yeah. I
Yes.
uh, it's kind of been like our experience this year. You've got your $3,000 gaming laptop in someone's hands, and the battery expanded, or they had something crash, and you have no visibility on it because it's in another house. Like you can't see it. You can only see as much as they're showing you, or their network's bad and they can't open the Revit model anyway. And so it's like, those machines work great when they work, in the same way that like cloud desktop, anything we could talk about, anything. It works when it works, and then when it doesn't, it's a huge pain, and that's something we've struggled with a lot. So from an IT perspective, to be able to just say, everybody's getting the same software, everyone's getting the same experience. When it goes wrong, we just like burn it down, build it new, and fix it for everyone instead of trying to fix it for one person and then anticipate when it breaks for other people. And everybody's on different Revit versions, and someone's downloaded some add-in that did something, and like you get rid of from an IT standpoint, it's been really great for us. But there is a trade-off for some of that.
that sounds like a pretty good trade-off from mine. Again, something that's never worked in a firm that has that large setup. But the idea that we don't have, 3 different types of laptops we have to buy and 15 different images, and the fact that it's all controlled and everyone has the same experience. To me, I think that's a definitely worthwhile trade-off. Again, not the one that signs the check, so maybe that would change my mind. But there certainly sounds like some benefits to that workflow, especially once it's no longer the bleeding edge as it might be now.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, we do still have people with Enscape capable laptops in front of them. So there's always that kind of fallback of, if you need something. Some of our users, you're working on a SketchUp model on your desktop. You don't need to be in the cloud for that, right? So it's not like hard and fast. Everybody's on cloud desktops now. It's like if it works better for you, use it, and if it doesn't, then don't. But for most people, we're finding that it does work better.
Mm-hmm.
You know what else I found kind of funny from this conversation that we've been having is that if you go back 2-3 years ago, Enscape was a fringe product that some people had that we saw at the conferences and thought was great, and now we're building our entire systems and infrastructures around being able to run Enscape.
I know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so we were pretty early on Enscape, and even then, it was mostly in our Phoenix office, where a lot of our multifamily residential work is happening. They were really big in Enscape, and it was this kind of fringe thing, and you had to have a great graphics card, and you had to on very large models put a section box around it, or turn off work sets, or do things because you would crash the rendering, right? So then now it's become such this ubiquitous thing in people's workflows that sometimes people will be like, "Oh, this crashed and I can't get it to work," and then we'll sit down with them and they're trying to do this huge model, and it's like, did you guys forget about section boxes? It worked so well for so long that people forgot some of those best practices, and it's like, you have to go back to those things, which again, if you have documentation, you can point people to.
Way to bring it back around.
Wow. It's interesting. What another interesting point too is, if you look in the past at Revit and look at Revit today, Revit is such a much more stable product than it used to be. Where you get people say, "Oh, I just lost a bunch of work." Well, when was the last time you saved? Oh, 6 hours ago. You're like, wow, you made it 6 hours. Kind of a thing.
It's starting to sound like the old days when our parents told us they walked uphill both ways to school. It's the same thing. You didn't have it hard. Remember when Revit, you didn't even have the ribbon? Come on.
Come on, yeah. We had to regen both ways.
That's going on a shirt.
Yes.
Back in the day, we had to regen both ways.
Both ways. Zooming in and zooming out. Oh, boy. Howdy. Good. So I'm sure you've got a great final thought, Dana.
A great thought. No, I think it comes right back. I mean, it's been almost a year since we've been forced to work remotely and find new solutions. And Jess seems like she's a real expert on a lot of those solutions. But I think that her insight is really amazing. I mean, just looking at all of those solutions and having to think about what are the pros and cons, and will people be able to access it, and will the software even allow it? All of those types of things are things that we're now forced to think about on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, where does our documentation live? Where do the files live? Where do we point people to? How do we educate people? How do we get people to communicate in this type of world and not suffer in silence? I feel like that's one of my biggest fears, is that people just suffer in silence. Like, oh, nope, Dynamo didn't work. I'm going to do it all manually. I'm like, no, don't do that, please.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's forced a pivot. And, I think Jess put it really eloquently that we are in the building industry. We, a lot of the time, are the people who have the foresight to think about not necessarily recreating the wheel, but what is it that it should be? What is the end to means? What is it? What is the ideal, and how can we get to that place? And I think that technology has to catch up with us in a lot of ways.
Technology has always been catching up to the AEC industry. Our programs are hard to run. They're hard to learn.
And we have such intelligent people behind the screens, right? I mean, and such it's so funny how a lot of the people we have on here are makers of some kind, and have that type of mentality of foresight, building things, making things, enhancing things, form and function.
I don't know of an architect or an engineer in our profession who wouldn't be a maker or want to be a maker. I think that's...
I met a lot of chefs as well.
I think that's why we became what we became in our career. It's because we like to make things.
Yeah, it's all problem solving in the end.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Jessica, you're so eloquent. It's like what I try to say in like 25 words. She's like, it's just this. You're like, yeah, exactly.
Yes, she gets the thing to... She can sit back and listen to you, Dana, and then think of the 2 words that sum up what you said.
Yeah, give me a synopsis of my thoughts, please. I need that. I need that more often. I feel like I'm scattered.
Well, I think we just touched this subject.
But no, a wonderful insight from Jess. Any final thoughts from you, Jess?
Not really. I think we covered a lot. I think, what you said, documentation is always important. Find ways to track the data on these things, because we can talk forever about people's experience and what's good, but unless you can actually quantify that experience, you're going to have a hard time rolling out, because as much as, people in the AEC industry are makers and problem solvers and want to change things, they also hate change. So, if you can track people's experience, so pulling Revit usage data and how long it typically takes their model to load before and after a change, you can come back to them. And even if you're not just being like, no, you're wrong, you can be like, look, I assure you, this is the same thing you were dealing with before. What can I do to help you? What else are we seeing? That kind of thing. Data is a huge thing for us, and it's what helps us make decisions, go for things that are kind of on the leading edge, and also come back at the end and say, yes, this was good. These people are all having the same experience. We've seen people, positive deviants, like I talked about, who are taking to things that you don't necessarily hear from them. And in the end, if you can bring that back to the people who sign the checks, they're going to keep letting you write checks, right?
Right. And in the words of Sheryl Crow, a change will do you good.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll call it an episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to have you back to talk about more of this stuff.
Would love to. This was so much fun, guys.
It is a lot of fun.